Hello and welcome. We appreciate you joining us here today. We will be getting started on the top of the hour, so get that last second coffee refill and we will see you in about 5 minutes time. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar is all about fundraising in this economy and alternative revenue streams and income ideas for nonprofits. So let's go ahead and introduce everyone.
Hey everyone, and thanks for being here. Let's take a moment and meet today's hosts and speakers. My name is Richard Council, and I am a marketing campaign manager for GiveSmart. Joining me, I have Madison Coutman, my co-marketing campaign manager. We will be your host for today's call. Our experts for today are going to be Kristen Faith Sharp, CEO and founder of the Nonprofit Makeover, and Kathy Nothnagel, content manager and team lead for the education nonprofit divisions of Community Brands. Madison, Kristen, Kathy, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here.
Me too.
Me three.
There. All right. So just really quick, some housekeeping tips as we get going. So please feel free to use the Q&A box for any questions you might have as we go. We check your chat box for resources and links we're going to be sharing throughout the webinar. Our colleague Megan is helping us out on the back end. So keep questions coming and don't be afraid to ask those questions because we want to have as many as we can at the end. And also, just really quick, today's call is being recorded and we will share that out with everyone attending. So sit back, get something to take some notes on, and let's get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, Kristen, we are so excited to have you speaking with us again today. On top of being a powerhouse marketer and philanthropist, you also have a ton of nonprofit experience and you have experience as a GiveSmart customer. So your voice is invaluable in this discussion and we all want to thank you for joining us. Can you take a moment to just introduce yourself and introduce the Nonprofit Makeover for our audience?
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here and share really insight as a nonprofit consultant, but also as a former customer. And when I say former, I actually transitioned out of the nonprofit that I created back in 2020 because I wanted to help more organizations like yours. I wanted to help nonprofits go digital and teach them how to raise more money on autopilot. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons and biggest resources to help me do that as a nonprofit executive director was really partnering with GiveSmart. I remember the first year that we used that digital fundraising platform where people were able to really text to donate. I kid you not, they did not pay me to say this. I literally raised more money in one single month than I ever had in all of the prior years as a fundraiser. And I put together a digital fundraiser called the Angel Run. And we raised, I believe it was like $45,000 in less than 30 days. So I'm really here to give more insight to help you raise more money without relying on grants and teaching what I know as a nonprofit expert and to really give you some inside tips on how you can level up this year.
Absolutely. I love hearing that feedback. And also myself as a previous GiveSmart customer, I can second that. And I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your voice. And we're excited to have you here today. And just for everyone attending, we do have links to the Nonprofit Makeover on social media, the website and email. So please connect with Kristen and the Nonprofit Makeover after this webinar. So let's go ahead and we will keep going.
Yeah, so thank you both, Madison and Kristen. I just want to quickly jump into today's agenda with all of you so you know what to expect for the hour. So we'll start with a brief poll before diving into giving trends and market observations. Then we'll get into ways for your organizations to cut costs and save money. We'll pause for a brief poll for our last section on revenue streams and income ideas, and then we'll end the call with a Q&A. As we mentioned, keep the questions coming. We'll answer some live and save some for the end. And we want your input. So if you have ideas to share or lessons learned, send us those messages in the chat and we can incorporate your ideas and feedback during the call.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get our first poll going. I'm going to go ahead and launch. We want to know more about your organization's estimated main source of revenue. It's okay if your answer is a guesstimation. This is just to connect your response to our data for the purpose of the call. And if you answer other, let us know in the chat what your other main source of revenue is, what we might be leaving out. The more ideas we get here today, the better. Share any other thoughts or feedback you have with us in the chat or in the Q&A box as well while we're going, because we definitely want to hear your voice, hear your feedback, and make sure that we are incorporating your ideas today as well. While the poll is going though, let's jump over to Kathy for her insights on some recent feedback she's heard from her own networking within local nonprofits she's connected with. So Kathy, I will pass it to you.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much. When I had a meeting a few weeks ago with some local nonprofits, and they were sort of talking about, where do we go from here? So after, having some interruption, obviously, over the past few years, like what does it look like moving forward, especially with uncertainty kind of on the horizon? And a big two kind of main topics of conversation, both of which I think we will dive into a little bit later this afternoon or this morning, are really centered around how do you leverage volunteer relationships, or how do you reestablish, or how do you maybe sunset some, as well as how do you kind of maximize, if you're doing events, how do you kind of confront any sort of increase in expenses or projected increase in expenses, and how do you maximize the people in the room so that you're raising more money? So it was interesting. I learned some things I didn't expect, and I'm sure there are things that everybody on the webinar today is feeling very acutely. So we will go through it a little bit more, but I'm curious what the results are. I'm sure they'll align with some others.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just went ahead and closed the poll. Looks like 30% of you said individual contributions. So that is definitely along the lines with what we have seen, as well as grants at 25%, and then falling in a little bit of a shorter third, fundraising events. So yeah, very close to what we've seen and what we will cover here today. So thank you for participating. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and we will keep going.
Yeah, so let's kick it off with nonprofit trends, giving trends, and market observations. Kathy, this is going back to you.
You all missed me, I know. So yesterday, hopefully most of you saw it, we had sent along a pre-webinar survey asking a few questions on like the impact of the economy in your organization or school, as well as what your main sources of revenue were. And obviously the poll we just saw aligns to kind of what we saw. And thank you to everyone who took the survey in advance. Some of you, as we had promised, won a Starbucks gift card. So make sure to go back to your email, and that's real. We gave a few away. So thank you. But as we look at these results, again, they aligned, I think, pretty carefully with, or pretty much with the poll we just took. But those individual contributions and donations, corporate giving, is really meaningful revenue stream for many of you. Obviously, events are high up there, with grants falling very much toward the bottom. And in terms of hardships facing, I know there were a few comments about like month to month, there's some instability, and the revenue is less consistent than we are hoping for. Obviously, an unstable job market is making probably staff that you kind of sit with nervous, as well as anybody who would be giving, or corporations who might be giving. There's some of you were looking at fewer donors and smaller donations, drop in attendance and engagement. But overall, the majority of you are very much feeling the impact of the economy and the uncertainty that could be around the corner, or certainly is being felt. And so all of this aligns with what we had sort of predicted. And we today are going to be talking through, I think, almost more than 24, I think close to 30 kind of revenue and income ideas to share with you, so you can expand your options, make some plans, and come together to kind of fill in some of those gaps, or put maybe some more sustainable revenue generating things out there to help you not only make your ends meet, but to thrive. And as we go to the next slide, kind of looking at some data. So to set the stage, we all know, obviously, gas prices over the summer were wild. Inflation kind of every month comes out to be between like 8.5% and 9%. And, as the cost of goods and services goes up, It means your budgets are more pinched than before. And we know that in economic downturn, it's not like you're getting 10% more revenue to help make up for that. Or, it's the demand of what your budgets are being pinched is not being met with donation revenue. We know that. So how can you sustain a decrease in giving when you likely have an increase in demand? Many of you, your nonprofits and schools, obviously are doing good in your communities. You're supporting your communities in a major way. And often there's an increase in requests too. So it's a tornado that can be really difficult to manage. No one's questioning that. And overall, the fundraising effectiveness project said that charitable giving had fallen as compared to last year. But as we look at the data from Give Smart Fundraising event platform, there does seem to be perhaps a counter in that there's an increase in average monthly donations. We're seeing an increase in the number of donations year over year when comparing to individual months. And as organizations, continue to feel the impact of the economy, it's important to keep in mind that, and a big part of the conversation today is going to be relationship building and donor relationship building, and really thinking of creative new ways to make an impact on your incoming revenue, and to help you kind of not only mitigate that risk, but be more adaptive to change. Because change, I think if anything over the past 3 years, change is coming and change is constant. And so how can we kind of become more sustainable and grounded in what we're doing? So I know, Kristen, you had some things to elaborate on when it came to engaging with your donors and kind of leveraging that during these periods of economic uncertainty.
Absolutely. So going back to what I mentioned a second ago when I was introducing myself to everybody, one of the cool things that I really appreciated about how I set up my nonprofit was through content and storytelling. And for a lot of traditional organizations, social media and digital fundraising and technology is a little bit outside of people's comfort zone. But I'm here to tell you, I am living proof that when you strategize and implement some different ideas in your organization, I promise you, it is a longer game in terms of how and the sustainability of your nonprofit's fundraising initiatives in comparison to grants. But I can tell you right now, when something like COVID or a recession comes to knocking at our door, we have to be prepared for the unknown. So during the pandemic, our organization was raising $20,000 per month on Facebook donations alone. And on top of that, we had reoccurring donations as well. And we had people that were contributing to our cause and our programs via our text to donate platforms. So when you're able to incorporate technology, you're giving people an opportunity to give with convenience. And that's really the secret sauce when it comes to creating that sustainable giving platform. So first, when you're talking about communicating your needs, we want to make it real. And in that, we want to give our donors literal examples of what they literally need to fund. And I can tell you also that we as nonprofit professionals and nonprofit leaders and achievers, we have to really showcase why overhead is, for lack of better words, sexy and needed, and why donors need to support those initiatives as well. Because let's face it, our nonprofit workers and volunteers are doing so much, and they deserve all the support that they can get when it comes to receiving donations to support overhead. So my biggest recommendation is to tell stories about your staff, tell stories about what programs you have coming up, and really walk them through kind of like the day in the life of your organization. This plays on their heartstrings, and it pulls on their heartstrings to want to give. Nurture your audiences to acquire new donors and retain the others. So a lot of times as fundraisers, we are so eager to get more and more donors in the door. And in reality, we're always seeing kind of this turnover of people staying as donors. They're changing over who they're giving to, or maybe they're lessening up their donations because they want to give to more organizations. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are cultivating our donor relationships. And in one of our previous presentations that we've done here at GiveSmart, I talked about segmenting your donors because not all of them are the same. Some people are philanthropists where they write the big checks and they give your organizations sometimes 6 figures or $20,000 to $30,000 to fund your programs. And that's great. They're not going to be your everyday donor who's going to contribute to maybe your upcoming retreat that you're hosting. And so when you're segmenting your donors in very unique niches, if you will, that's going to help you hone in on how you need to approach them, how you need to cultivate that relationship, and also how you're going to keep that relationship going. Because if you treat every donor the same, meaning, oh, the philanthropist is going to be this type of donor, and we're going to continually send them holiday cards, or we're going to continually send them t-shirts in the mail. But that's really not the type of recognition that they're looking for. We want to make sure that the donors who do receive information from your organization, that they understand how your organization works and also how they want to be treated as donors. So in case you haven't done this before, ask them, how would you like to be supported, or how would you like to be recognized? And some organizations don't feel comfortable doing that. I've done that and actually got a really great response from a lot of our reoccurring donors, many of which didn't want the little perks. They didn't want the stickers. They didn't want the notes in the mail. They didn't want the cards. They didn't want the t-shirts in the mail for thanking them for their donation. And so having those conversations allow you to understand how you can show up for those donors. And of course, we have upcoming events, upcoming opportunities like the fall and holiday fundraisers. So if you haven't already started planning these things, now is the right time to do that. Giving Tuesday is right around the corner, which I can't believe that's even coming out of my mouth right now. But Giving Tuesday is right around the corner. And I see this time and time again. And I will say this, I am also guilty of it. Planning Giving Tuesday fundraisers literally right before the actual day. So I am going to encourage you. Here we are, several weeks away from Giving Tuesday. I want to encourage you to start thinking about how you are going to incorporate digital fundraising, social media, technology into this year's Giving Tuesday efforts. That way, you're not scrambling at the last minute to figure out, what should we be doing? And year-end appeals. I'm going to tell you this from someone who, again, raises money online and someone who is also a millennial. A lot of people approach me and ask me, how do we get younger people to donate? I apologize in advance, but year-end appeals typically look like sending out mass quantities of letters to donors. And a lot of organizations have asked, how do we get millennials to give? I can tell you right now, millennials are probably not opening their mail for weeks on end. And millennials don't want to receive letters in the mail. However, there are other ways on how you can engage those donors and how you can get them excited about your cause. And I promise you, just because someone is donating to, Children's Hospital, that doesn't mean that they don't want to also donate to your cause. They just don't know about you yet. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't reached out to the Nonprofit Makeover, I'd love to connect with you to start getting your wheels turning on how you can start getting more diverse groups of people to donate to your cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all amazing takeaways. And we did have a question come in real quick. So before we move over into our next section, I did want to ask you real quick, how did you ask your donors how they wanted to be recognized? What ways did you go about doing that?
Great question. So I am very transparent. There are a couple ways. One, depending on the relationship you have with donors, if you can pick up the phone, I know in case you have a lot of reoccurring donors, I guess it depends on your organization. However, some donors, I literally picked up the phone and say, hey, Doris, I've seen that you've been donating with us for X amount of time. And I'm just curious, how do you like to be recognized? And I even put a list of things together for our members to say, hey, are these things items that you would want, or are these some ways that you would want to be gifted? Kind of think of it like love languages, like in a relationship, and how your significant other or you want to be treated. Sometimes you like gifts, sometimes you like words of affirmation, sometimes you like quality time. And so we kind of have to equate that with donors in terms of how you interact with them. Some of your donors want to be able to come in and volunteer with you. Some donors want, the surprise phone call or the voicemail from maybe the executive director, or maybe even someone who's been supported by your organization. To me, that was a really, really turnkey and really special way on how we actually showed up for our donors, is that we reached out to the very people who were impacted by our cause. And we said, hey, Lauren, I know that you attended our retreat, and I was wondering if you would write us a testimonial. And she wrote one for us, and we literally replicated hundreds of cards with Lauren's message on it. And every single donation that came in digitally or in person or via mail, we literally mailed a person or a donor a card that was essentially written by Lauren. So you can reach out to them via phone, you can reach out to them via social media, or an easy way to do it is by putting out a Google survey and asking them what are some ways that you would like to be recognized, and even giving some ideas on what you currently do. Some people like the perks, and some people have literally said, save your money. I want every dollar to go towards helping your cause. So those are some ideas.
Yeah, those are a lot of ideas. So I really hope, the good news is we are recording, so great news there. And also, if you wanted to catch those and get those implemented today, hopefully you were writing pretty quick. So thank you again, Kristen. So now let's jump into some money saving options for nonprofits and schools. And guess what, Kathy? You're up next.
Oh, delightful. I liked, Kristen, what you said about keeping it real, in tandem with your storytelling, not only sharing, what deliverables you're doing or what you're doing for your constituents and your beneficiaries, but I also think being very honest about and direct with your language when it comes to sharing, the impact of increased expenses, for example. I think a lot of times we use perhaps friendlier language or PC language around like it costs us more, and that more means different things to different people. So being very specific, saying, for example, if you're an organization that works with medically vulnerable people and you, house those individuals, and the medical supplies maybe cost you, 30% more or $20,000, and it was out of pocket that your org had to pay. I truthfully don't feel that people always recognize that, or they think it's covered by a grant or whatever. But when we're very tangible, I think you see tangible results. And that's, what a big part of storytelling too. But to go to these cost cutting, a big thing I know in my experience was really reviewing your contracts. And I know that perhaps you're like, of course, Kathy, we review our contracts, but often there are fees that can be a part of any contract for an event or something like that, where you're not even using that good or service, or it's clearly inflated to help fill in some gaps or to help take advantage of, particularly, sometimes for corporate events, people don't, just assume those fees are real. It is always fair to critically look at a contract and say, is this setup fee really something that we need to be paying? Or walk me through why the setup fee exists. And I know in my past life, we would often get, in some cases, over $10,000 of fees just cut because they were in there to basically inflate the contract. Another big thing is auditing the tools and auditing the things you've already paid for. We did a research study not so long ago, and I've already mentioned it today. And half of the organizations had multiple tools that could perform the same function. That's wasteful. I think you all know that. But if you take a critical look, and often we don't, and say, okay, we need something that we can set up our Giving Tuesday, like Kristen was talking about, as many of you are probably certainly thinking about and planning for. and maybe you're like, oh, we need to make sure that we can get a QR code associated with that, or text to donate as a part of that, or whatever that may look like, or an event page that we can live stream on, or an event page that can also integrate with peer-to-peer, or whatever that looks like. Rather than going out and seeking that, look at the things that you already have and say, does it already exist? That's a big, big, big thing, because 6 in 10 organizations in this survey said that they specifically went out and bought specialized technology to fulfill a singular need. So rather than looking at what they already had, they said, well, we need this thing, so let's go find it. And in many instances, they could have already had it. And it was already available to them. And it's something people were familiar with. And all of the other pieces, like the reporting and getting the funds to your organization, there was a comfort level there. And people are kind of seeking all these tools when a lot of it's right in front of you. So when it comes to, like, finding and using platforms, also have a conversation that companies, often offer free or discounted rates for nonprofit organizations. That certainly goes with your events or any other sort of vendor you're looking at. Or they might give you a discount for in kind. So they would typically, charge a customer a certain amount of money, but they'll give you 20% off. That 20% off for them is a tax write-off. So, have those conversations and point those things out, because people don't always, I think we assume that people think those things, and they don't, and they do not always. And if you do have the ability to switch platforms to save money, or if you feel like there's a platform that you would really like to try, look for those discounts, or see if somebody can underwrite it for you. We do have some organizations who get GiveSmart underwritten, or right now GiveSmart's doing contract with us now when you don't pay until 2023. And that was a game changer for some organizations who were like, this helps me get to my next year's budget for spending. And so we can use GiveSmart now and have it as a part of our budget moving forward. So a lot of times those opportunities exist. You just kind of have to either be in tune to them or ask. And the worst thing that's going to happen, I mean, you all ask for money, you're fundraisers, I get it. You hear no all the time. So the worst thing you're going to hear is, no, we can't cut that fee, or no, we can't do whatever. And then you're no worse for the wear. But I think that those are just really, really important things that we don't always do. I don't do it in my personal life. And certainly, it was something we really had to be diligent about, but it pays off in a big way.
Absolutely. Those are great call outs. And Kristen, can you tell us a little bit more about saving money on maybe the event side of things?
Absolutely. So I can sit here right now and probably guess that many of us here on this call have either done a gala, have thought about a gala, or have experienced the hard work and efforts that galas require. And so one of the things I will talk about that kind of segments or actually relates to what I was just mentioning in my previous slide about segmenting your donors. I was literally talking to a nonprofit the other day, and she had called me and asked about putting together an event for October. And I had asked her, do you have anything planned for it? Do you have a budget for it? And what does that look like? Because if you're trying to plan a gala in 1 month's time, many of you are probably thinking right now, oh, that's not possible. Well, anything is possible. However, one of the things that I also take into consideration is, if your event costs $15,000, do you have $15,000 to just throw away, hypothetically? And what I mean by that is, typically fancy events like that do cost a lot of money. And as a nonprofit, many times we are on a budget. And so when you are thinking about the different types of events that you are planning to do this year or next, or many years down the road, think about who your target donor is. Think about who your current donor network is. If you don't have those big philanthropists in your network, if you don't have the big sponsors in your network, then having really expensive events and productions may not be the best fit for you. And that's okay, because one of the things that I also like doing, and also personally have enjoyed putting together, are like tasting events. As a nonprofit, we need to tap into different groups of people and supporters who ultimately believe in our mission. And so if you have donors, volunteers, board members who are a part of your core team that maybe work in the restaurant field, or maybe have access to a particular type of venue or whatever thing in between. Or if you yourself are a dancer, or maybe you enjoy, I don't know, taking trips. Think of all the things that you personally like doing and think about how you can monetize, or in this case, raise money from those things. Let me give you an example. When you start trimming the fat from these events, and I'm not talking, just cutting back on events, period. I'm talking about changing or pivoting the way that you are approaching events. And I'm talking about tasting, food tastings that you can get food donated. Boom. Now that expense is gone. Maybe you know someone that owns a local restaurant that you'll be able to use for an event. Boom. Now the venue cost is gone. Maybe you are a dancer with a local dance group and they can perform at your event. Boom. Now the entertainment cost is cut down. And so think of all the different aspects of events that happen and think about your personal network, because that's really what it's about. It's about community coming and uniting community. And so when you're putting together these events and you're like, I want to raise $1 million, which I hear that so much. But if you don't have a way on how you're raising $1 million, it's kind of just a number. So you have to really think about, okay, who's my target donor? Who is my current donor? And what do my donors like to do? So when I was running my nonprofit, a lot of the people who were giving to us were millennials and people who, really just wanted to have fun and also give back to a really great cause. And so some of the event ideas, feel free to write these down. I did a battle of the bands. I did a food tasting, which was like Taste of the Island style, where we had Filipino food, Hawaiian food, and people literally got to taste all these different restaurants' food when they paid for their ticket. And people were so happy, so full. I'm also a hula dancer, so I had a dance group perform. I had a local musician come and do music prior to the show. And so all of these things were all made possible because I had these individuals in my network. Same thing for you. If you have different things in your network, maybe you like fishing, maybe you know a local fishermen's group that can take some donors fishing, or you can do a tournament. Again, golf tournaments are a lot of work and also kind of pricey, but if you have a connection at a local golf course, great, do it. So really, it's all about being innovative and creative and thinking outside of the box. Also, when it comes to fundraisers, go digital. One of the things that we did literally in the midst of the pandemic was doing a virtual benefit concert. That meant that we could stream this benefit concert anywhere around the world, and people were literally able to text and donate. And we raised $16,000 online in the middle of the pandemic. And what's cool about it is that you could reuse it. The cool thing about technology is that you can repurpose that stream and play it again later that year and play it again the following year, because it'll look like it's a brand new event. And so when you're going digital, the cool thing about it and the cool thing about content is that it can be repurposed without you having to pay for it. So think of all those things when you are incorporating fundraisers into your calendar of events. And the top 3 technology features in which nonprofits want and really need to invest in is text to donate, online giving, and event fundraising. Those are 3 important things. Also, before I pass the microphone back, is when you are fundraising, think about how you are raising the money. And also, again, going back to the example that I mentioned, if you don't have $15,000 to just throw at an event because you don't have any other money after that, don't do it. Get creative and think about how you can flip the money. If I were to spend $10,000 on an event, can I raise $20,000? Now, that's the only reason why I would encourage you to go for that $10,000 to $15,000 event, is if you can guarantee that you are going to raise $15,000 more than what you started with. Now, if it's a possibility and you really don't know, and you're struggling to sell tickets and people don't really know about the event, or maybe you're having a hard time marketing it, or maybe you really don't have the donor pool, then really maybe it's time to go back to the drawing board and get innovative on how you are doing your events.
Absolutely. Those are all really great call outs, especially taking things digital and just using the options available to you, doing what you can to save some money at events. All of that is so important. But I did want to just take a quick pause here just to let Kathy and Kristen take a breather and just to take the pulse of the room. As a reminder, and in case you missed it, we are recording today's call and we will be sending out an email to all of you within the next 24 hours or so that will include the recording as well as all of the resources that are being shared in the chat. So keep an eye out for that if you're not able to keep up with all the links and everything that we're sharing. No worries, it will all be coming your way. So real quick, let's get this poll started. We just want to know if your organization is considering GiveSmart, or if you're just overall looking for ways to enhance your use of mobile bidding, ticketing, event management, donor management, and or fundraising software. Let us know if you'd like either of the options in the poll. We included, all aspects of the GiveSmart platform are here for your fundraising success, and we are here to help you. And the only way we know how to help and follow up with you is to ask. So thank you to everyone who has submitted the poll. I'm going to go ahead and end it. There is also a survey at the end of today's session, so please take an opportunity to fill out that survey if you didn't get a chance to respond in the poll. But Richard, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madison. So let's dive into the last portion of today's session. And in my opinion, the most fun portion of today's session. Kathy, can you kick us off with some data on revenue, please?
Absolutely. So when we're looking at this, it obviously mirrors the pre-event survey that we did and the poll that we did earlier in the webinar today. And, when we look at, before we look at getting into these creative kind of income ideas, we just wanted to bring it back to this because obviously some of these things are going to plateau, right? If a third of revenue is kind of from individual giving, it's unreasonable to say that 2/3 of revenue could tomorrow be from individual giving. So what are some of the kind of creative or new things that folks at organizations and schools can do to augment your other revenue streams? And there's plenty out there to help your organization kind of break through and increase some of these other numbers to give it kind of that stronger kind of stability and foundation that it's obvious many people are craving. So Kristen, I know you had some initial thoughts.
I do. I have lots of thoughts. For those who hadn't had the chance to hear, I actually put together a lovely list of 30 different ways on how nonprofits can make money, raise money, and ultimately help you earn more money for your organizations without relying on grants. Most of our donations, I will say about 99% of our giving, especially during the pandemic, came from people like you and I that supported the cause. And I am proud to say, even 2 years after me transitioning out of my nonprofit, you can check the receipts right now. If you go on to Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence on our social media, you'll see that we're verified, number one. Number two, you'll see that there are thousands of dollars being raised every single moment of the day, every day. And it was because I helped create what I call sustainability within our nonprofit, and we're able to raise money on autopilot. What you can't see, however, is the reoccurring donors or the reoccurring donations that happen digitally through our website or through any other fundraising avenues that we've used. So I wanted to jump in real quick and talk about revenue streams. And so if any of you are interested in tapping into my 30 streams of revenue guide, feel free to drop a comment and or in the comment section, you actually will see my email. Feel free to shoot me an email and I'll hook you up. So number one is grants. So of course, many of you mentioned grants are a big way on how you raise money for your cause, but I did want to put things into perspective just a little bit differently and challenge the way that you think about grants. Actually, we have over 100 nonprofits on this call right here, right now. If we have 100 nonprofits who are applying for one grant, what happens to the 99? I'll tell you, we have to start over and we have to figure out how we're going to raise more money. And so my thought process is I want to help organizations diversify their funding so they don't have to rely on grants. Because if you are one of the 99 who doesn't get the grant, I want to make sure that you have other fundraising opportunities available in your back pocket so you can continue doing the great work you do. So grants are one of the revenue streams that you can tap into. We all know them, we all heard of them, and maybe all of us have already applied for them. Individual contributions. Now, I personally think this is one of my favorites because to me, individual contributions means relationships. It means I get to know about you and you get to know about me, and together we can make a better community. Now, I didn't realize I was going to rhyme, but that sounds good. So I'm sticking to it. So individual contributions, a lot of people have their own feelings about individual contributions. And what I will say is this: it does take a long time to really cultivate a relationship with a donor. But think about a relationship with a person that maybe you want a relationship with. You're not going to walk up to someone walking down the street and say, "Hey, give me some money." You're not going to do that, but you're going to say, "Hey, tell me what causes you like to support. Tell me what you like to do in your free time. Tell me how you volunteer and who you volunteer with." It's all about the relationship. It's all about the cultivation. But individual contributions is really cool in a really special way, because if I'm a donor and I love the local Pikes Peak Children's Museum and I tell everyone about it because I took my kids there and I post about it on social media, guess what? If I have 1,000 friends on Facebook, 1,000 people get to know that I love the Children's Museum. And for my friends and family to get to see that I love that place, they're going to fall in love with it because I love it. And now you have 1,000 potential donors that are going to be donating to your cause on their birthday, or because you put out a text to donate number, or maybe they're having an upcoming gala and you just bought a table. And so you're going to invite those friends to that event. And so when you're giving people a great experience with your nonprofit, those people are going to go back and they're going to be raving fans, and they're going to tell everyone and their mama about your nonprofit. You just got to cultivate that relationship. Next, annual and large gifts. I'm talking about those philanthropists. I'm talking about the people who have the big bucks, who can write that 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 check and not even have an issue with it. I literally remember going to a gala out here in Colorado Springs, and a woman stood up and said, "I'll match $50,000. And I looked over to this lady and I'm like, "Oh my God, what does this lady do?" But guess what? There are people that have the ability to bless nonprofits in an incredible way. And so how that even happens is those people love to see the impact on what your organization is doing. They want to see the work that you all do in the trenches that you all are in every single day. They want to see the numbers. They want to see the facts. They want to see the videos and the testimonials on how their donation is literally making their community better. Next, we have fundraising events, the galas and the golf tournaments, the fancy events, the tasting events, the battle of the bands, the virtual benefit concerts. Those are all different ways on how you can tap into a different demographic of people, ultimately keeping your calendar of events fresh and exciting, and also gives people an opportunity to invite other people based on their interests. Digital options. Now, if you haven't tapped into these ones, these are also options that I think are all pretty darn great, because it allows you to raise money on autopilot. Quite frankly, I've talked about Facebook fundraisers and how game-changing it's been for me and the organization that I started. Venmo and PayPal, cryptocurrency, and Apple Pay. These are all ways on how you can allow people to give with convenience. And last but not least, but I'm not going to say last because I got a little bit more for you up my sleeve, is Amazon Smile. Amazon is a cool way, an easy way for those of us who like to spend lots of money, like myself, on Amazon. It takes a little bit of time to kind of getting used to, because you actually have to go to a special website to be able to use Amazon Smile. You can't just go to the classic Amazon. You got to go to amazon.smile.com. It makes it a little bit tricky, but nonetheless, if you have 10, 20, 30, 50 people who are part of your organization, say, "Hey, before you check out, make sure you're on Amazon Smile and you type in our nonprofit." So, those dollars here and there add up to be able to contribute to your cause. Maybe they'll pay for pens and pencils, and maybe it'll pay for your light bill. So these are all ways on how you can incorporate more funding streams into your organization.
Awesome. And I know you just mentioned kind of Apple Pay and Google Pay and Amazon Smile. I know something that I remember when I was living it every day, and I was like, of course people know about Amazon Smile because we told them whatever. We had it in an email. I think we need to always remember can't assume that mentioning something one time means that people got it. So, GiveSmart takes Apple Pay and Google Pay, and we got a question about that. And so if as you're going through and promoting, an event or an upcoming fundraiser or peer-to-peer or whatever that may look like, your upcoming Giving Tuesday annual campaign, mentioning that that's an option for people to make it easy for them and convenient, particularly Apple Pay and just Google and Apple Pay on GiveSmart or Amazon Smile, saying, hey, as you're doing kind of any sort of holiday shopping or end of year shopping, or I don't know, making sure your shampoo gets delivered to your door so that you have it when you need it. Consider us, make sure to add us in. And this is the steps you take to do it, I think is really, really critical and important, because I think most of the time people are willing to do things, but if they have to think through how to make it happen, it won't happen. And so that's really, really good ideas. And also just being mindful of communicating and is really, really important too. I'm going to touch a little bit on some of those other pieces and other revenue stream ideas. So corporate philanthropy and sponsorship. So corporate and social responsibility, I think, is something that is untapped in some ways, difficult to crack in others, 100 million %. But there are, from small companies to big companies to companies, if they're headquartered by where your organization is or have a big regional office, but it doesn't even have to be that. A lot of times, individual, branches or offices definitely can be an opportunity for you to kind of develop these corporate relationships. I know something that we used to do, or we had a lot of success with, was relationship mapping. And so again, I just kind of touched on it with the whole Amazon and Google Pay and Apple Pay, that people don't know what they don't know, or they're not necessarily thinking unless you're asking targeted questions. So we used to sit down and say, this is a company that we would love to get an inroad in. Does anyone know anyone specifically at this company? Let's talk about it. Or let's talk about, do you know someone who knows someone? And it always surprised me, and it shouldn't have, because there would be someone who we had talked about, for months about getting corporate interest or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, my brother-in-law is the so-and-so. And you're like, oh, that's someone we would love to talk to, And so until people are kind of given that pointed path, they don't always come up. And I know I'm this way too. So again, shouldn't be surprising, but giving people that pointed path, or sitting down and really going through their LinkedIn or asking them to write people down, can sometimes spark ideas or inroads that they otherwise wouldn't have done. So some conversations to have with companies as you kind of get maybe your foot in the door are affinity programs. And that often is kind of a benefit for both the corporation and for the nonprofit. So that could be, the coffee of the month at this local coffee store, or this local chain of coffee stores in your area. 10% of sales will go to XYZ organization. And so you promote going there, they promote you. Some opportunities that you could have too to expand upon that is with GiveSmart, you can create a QR code that takes you right to a donation form. So I remember in my past life, we used to do that and put them in check presenters at restaurants, or you can put up a little postcard sign like at the checkout counter to make that giving easier. If you enable people and give them the tools to make it easy, you're going to have more return. You make it complicated, or you expect them to go home and Google you. You all know this. You're not going to get as many donations as you would have in the moment. And once those partnerships are established, it can help kind of formulate how you work with other corporations or other businesses in a major way. So, corporate giving can look philanthropic. So they just give a straight donation with no expectation. Sponsorship, which I know is something that has been a conversation off and on. And what can that look like? What opportunities can you give to people? What sort of unique opportunities can people kind of have to make it interesting to be a sponsor of your organization. Something we saw, I saw and I thought it was brilliant and really smart and kind of taps into this foundations conversation too, is there was an organization that did a matching gift, but for sponsorships. So there was a foundation they had worked with for years and years, and they always gave, and they said, would you be willing to increase your gift? And we want to use that to get a matching sponsorship. So instead of giving 20,000 this year, can you give 30? But on the condition that we get 30,000 of sponsorship. And it was a great inroad to have conversations with lapsed sponsors or past sponsors or new sponsors to say, help us get there, and your sponsorship can even be more meaningful and will be matched. I thought it was brilliant. It was really smart, and it worked really well for that organization. Another opportunity is, I think I mentioned it earlier, but kind of that in-kind gift opportunity. So can, if you're doing an event, or if you are, let's say you have an opportunity at like a checkout counter, but you need to have, signage made with your QR code or with your organization or with your donation link or whatever. Is there a print shop that would give you a discount and then they would get partial write-off? Or is there a print shop that would be willing to give it to you in full and they can put their logo at the bottom? I mean, there's opportunities there. Absolutely. And I know I've mentioned checkout campaigns, but that's a nice opportunity. And you can do that at local stores, you can do that at local chains, and you can certainly do it, at bigger chains. And those inroads maybe are a little bit harder because there's more people, right? But I think it can be a big revenue maker to have, are you willing to donate at the register? Or don't forget to scan the QR code, and all of that can go really make a big difference and a big impact, and is something that can be sustainable, because once you kind of figure it out the first time, you have some opportunities to kind of improve upon that. I know we talk a lot about like retail opportunities. So is there something that can be co-branded and sold, or, you get a percentage of sales? Talking about those kind of family foundations, community foundations, like I said, there are, as Kristen had mentioned, like you can't just walk in the door and be like, give me a bunch of money. But can you look back at your donor list and see what foundations have given to you? Or if there's people who've given consistently, is their family name associated with a family foundation? Are there opportunities? And really to kind of work best with them, you do need to have a one-on-one conversation. You do need to say, what motivated you? What excites you? What do you want to see more of? Is there, this is a critical need that we have and it's going to be underfunded. Is that something that you would be interested in? Those conversations take more time. There's no question that that's true, but they can have the biggest return by far. And again, once you kind of get that going and you have it kind of figured out, it's easier to replicate. Even are there some instances, and you might be sitting here saying, Kathy, this all sounds fine and good, but I am strapped for time, strapped for people, and strapped for energy. So who you fooling? I will say sometimes it is easier, or you have opportunities that already exist to kind of build those relationships. So do you have a golf outing that's happening and you're already on the course anyway? Can you have a special foundation like VIP happy hour or VIP start time, and just make these people feel that, they're invested in you and your mission. You're acknowledging that they're special to you, and to have those meaningful conversations so that you can help move the needle with them. So looking at some things that you already have going can really be the way that you can help build those relationships. And that certainly does take some time, but I do feel like that investment of time and energy is well worth it. And then, I mentioned kind of looking at some digital and social media opportunities that you have. Text to donate. Do you have, data consistently shows that texting with your donors is really the best communication option in terms of what's opened, what's looked at, and what is acted on. For peer-to-peer or any sort of social fundraising, do you have any high-level volunteers or high-level committees, or volunteers who are consistently dedicated to you, who can hold wraparound events to support your overall event? So again, we know that you're strapped for time, for energy, and for staffing. So to say, would you be willing to have this junior board do a photo scavenger hunt, and all of the money that they raise goes back to and ties back to your, singular event? Or do you have a pre-event raffle item that someone can get for you, and it is a high ticket item and you can really publicize it, but it's run by that group of people so that your staff can do the things that they need to do? Is there a ticketed virtual cooking demonstration? Is there a cocktail recipe contest? There's a lot of things that can be wraparound events tied to your major event that you can get support with if you kind of lay that foundation and have those conversations. And a big one that we talk about a lot, but there's a reason that we do, is recurring giving. So recurring giving, turning it on as an option on your donation platform, and it's an option that's easy to turn on GiveSmart, both on Fundraise and on events. And we have the option to even have like a little reminder, like, do you want to make your gift monthly? But treating those recurring monthly donors as special will benefit you in the long run. So can you make sure that they get a special newsletter? Kristen had mentioned, like a special note card. Is there something that you can have just for those dedicated monthly donors? Are there ways that you can acknowledge them at your events? Can you give every recurring donor a ribbon? And when people ask, what is that for? It's like, oh, I'm a monthly donor and I'm special. Can you give them the opportunity to have a VIP happy hour? Can you provide special access to a tour or to a virtual meet and greet with a researcher? Or can they get a special discount code for your tickets or special early bird pricing? Or there's a lot of things that are in your toolbox that you can use to incentivize and make those individuals feel like they matter. And we harp a lot on recurring giving because recurring donors have twice the retention rate of one-time donors, and their lifetime value is 2 to 10 times higher than that of a one-time donor. Even if that one-time donor gives another gift, like gives a gift annually or quarterly or whatever that may look like. So if you can crack that recurring giving code and really meaningfully put together a plan, it can really, 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 really benefit you and your organization or school.
All right, I'm back. I told you I had more information for you. So more revenue streams that are also great avenues and resources for you to tap into to expand your donations, programs and services. So if you are hosting a retreat, for example, we hosted a women's retreat and a family retreat within our nonprofit, and we charged a small fee. That small fee allowed us to cover almost all of our cost of our program. So if that is an option, that also allows you to kind of give the people who you're serving kind of skin in the game, so they will show up. So we are not spending money and having those seats not filled in the event that they decide to do one of those no-show type things. So programs and services are a great way for you to raise money, which also relates to classes and educational opportunities. I actually built one of the most successful domestic violence speakers bureaus in the country, where we were raising about $20,000 for that program. And the cool thing about it is we were able to give a lot of money, thousands, to actually, I think about $20,000 away each year for domestic violence survivors and those who had been affected by DV, the opportunity to speak, and they were able to get paid through our program. So if you haven't started a speakers bureau and that could be something that you are interested in tapping into, again, my doors are virtually open, and I would love to connect with all of you on how you could expand the work that you're doing to ultimately help raise more money, because we don't want to operate from a place of scarcity or chaos, or the phrase that I like telling nonprofits. I actually created some merchandise the other day for an event that I was hosting, and I put on the t-shirt, begging for dollars. All the nonprofit leaders who saw that were like, I know exactly what that means. So no more begging for dollars. We want to be able to receive that money on autopilot. And the best way we do that is by diversifying our fundraising efforts. Membership fees. So this is kind of that reoccurring gift, or maybe you have another avenue on how you can do a subscription for your nonprofit. There are so many different ways you can tap into that. Advertisements. So if you're a nonprofit, and bear with me because this is a real thing, because our organization was reaching about 200 million people every month and we had pretty solid website traffic, people actually paid for space on our website and for us and for us to do advertisements for different businesses who are interested in the work that we had going on. Plus, people wanted to see their brand on our social media. So I can't see the rest of the presentation at this time, but advertisements is a great way in which you can incorporate into your message and the work that you do.
Absolutely. And it did cut out at kind of a funny time. But I will bring it back up in just a second. But as we kind of look ahead to kind of closing this out, and we are up on the hour. So we didn't have a ton of questions, but we will be following up with a blog that we will share it with everyone with a full and comprehensive answer to the few questions that we did get. But here's just some nice do's and don'ts and let me take a breather and share my screen. Give me 1 second, everyone. Maybe not. So some really easy do's and don'ts. Do get creative with in-kind donations. We've talked about it a lot today. Obviously get creative with your fundraising. Hopefully of those like 20 to 30 ideas, there are some that are easy enough and the right things for you guys to do, you all to do, to excuse me, really be able to get creative with your fundraising and get creative with your giving options. There are expansions that you can do that are fairly turnkey to kind of help generate some of that foundational consistent revenue so that you don't feel panicked or you don't feel like you're living month to month or anything like that. And when that stability comes, that's when growth happens, right? Don't make it too confusing to give. Like I said, we have secure, easy options like with GiveSmart, Apple Pay, Google Pay, donation forms that are easy to text out and it goes right there. If you make it easier, you'll have more return. And don't forget to thank those donors. Kristen, spoke a lot today about making sure to relationship build and to be thoughtful with your thank yous and all the rest of it. So with that, I think we will close out. Thank you so much. Don't forget there is a survey. So please, please, please take it. We take your feedback to heart. And certainly if you have additional questions, and as a reminder, you can start fundraising today and you wouldn't pay any for any of your GiveSmart contract until 2023, which is exciting and a game changer for a lot of folks. So with that, thank you, everyone.